here with the great Deepak Chopra. He's been on the show before. We're thrilled to have him on again. His most recent book, Digital Dharma, How AI Can Elevate Spiritual Intelligence and Personal Well-Being. We're going to talk a lot about that. He's the founder of Deepak Chopra AI. We're going to .ai. We're going to talk about that. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Thank you, Donnie.
Before we get into your projects and before we get into the book and before we get into AI, I would love to hear some advice to people because I've never seen people so on edge because of the politics, and no matter which side of the spectrum you're on, but people seem to be very on edge. How do people start to introduce spirituality in their life in this new 2025 world of chaos?
A little bit of self-reflection, awareness of your body, awareness of your breath, inquiry, why am I anxious? What can I do about it? How can I be the change I want to see in the world? So you can't cure anxiety with anxiety. And most anxiety comes from anticipating the future and remembering the past and then recycling trauma. So everything that you see in the world today is the recycling of trauma, either ancestral trauma, childhood trauma, physical trauma, verbal trauma, emotional trauma, sexual trauma. Trauma leads to anger. Anger leads to hostility, which is the desire for retribution, which then can lead to guilt and shame, which can then lead to depression and anxiety. And that's the pandemic of our time. And it's perpetuated by social media, by the news cycle, because everybody thrives on drama. The more drama, the more money for everyone. So it's kind of interesting to me that we have medieval minds and then we have modern capacities that exacerbate our tribal medieval tendencies of fear, tribalism, racism, ethnocentrism, bigotry, hatred. All that comes from, our hunter-gatherer age, where the only way to survive was through trauma. Either you run, or you inflict trauma, you kill, or you get killed. But that kind of mind and today's capacities, including AI, could lead to our extinction. So if you want peace in the world, be peaceful. Otherwise, be a peace activist and you might get a Nobel Prize and not be peaceful, which is the irony of the whole thing.
That's an amazing irony. Let's talk about Deepak Chopra AI, and you've created kind of a digital version of yourself. I don't know if that's accurate, but talk to us about it and how people use it, because it's really fascinating.
So DeepakChopra.ai has been fed all of my 95 books.
Let's repeat that, 95 books.
Yeah,
that's insane. Okay, that's amazing. Go ahead.
It also includes every conversation I've had publicly, like the one we're having now. It'll go on DeepakChopra.ai. And then it has also includes all the videos I've done, YouTube, Instagram, social media. And it is selected as, or what we can call it, a small language model. So when you go on ChatGPT, for example, that's a large language model. It's huge and it has too much information. Some of it may be irrelevant to you. And sometimes large language models hallucinate. DeepakChopra.ai is very personal. You can engage with it in a conversation. You could do an entire interview just now that you're doing with me. You could do it with my AI and it would give you better answers because, it goes through my entire database and then it engages you in reflection. It's not a dogmatic, this is the truth. No, it engages you. It gets to learn about you. And then it answers your questions depending on what you need at the moment. So it's very personalized, but it also taps into the spiritual intelligence of humanity. Today you can access the mind of Plato, or if you want the Buddha, or if you want, Jesus Christ, or sages of the Upanishads, or anybody else. And you can see how that relates to your personal dilemma right now. And as we move forward, I'm integrating it with these measurable devices so it can get to know everything about you, including your heart rate variability, your sleeping patterns, the way you converse with other people. If you want, you can get to that stage where it knows you better than you know yourself. And that's ultimately the goal of all spiritual traditions. Know thyself.
It's incredible. It really. So if I go on there and I type in, "Hi, I'm having trouble. I'm going through a divorce. I need some centering." I'm going to get whatever you've said, not literally, but kind of an amalgam of anything that you've said or helped people with who's going through that type of trauma, for lack of a better word, and
Correct.
and that's what I'm going to get from it.
And you'll get that and you'll hear me speaking in English. But if you chose to hear me in Spanish or Arabic or Hindi, you could do that too. And as we speak, because China is so dominating the market, I think I'm going to colonize China with this spirituality as well.
Is there a, I don't want to say a contradiction in terms, because what you're doing is you're opening up your wisdom and your guidance to so many people. But is there something counterintuitive in that it's not, it's we're giving up some of our thinking and allowing a artificial intelligent, this is the whole, I guess, the problem with, not the problem with AI, the questions with AI and the downsides of AI. And talk to me about how you've kind of juggled that.
Well, every technology has what I call divine and diabolical aspects to it. When we discovered the knife, you can use a knife to kill a person, and the hands of a surgeon, the knife becomes a healing instrument. Had we not discovered fire and started cooking food, we wouldn't have the brain we have, and we wouldn't have the steam engine, we wouldn't have the industrial age. So humans are different from other species. First of all, we have a language for narrative, for telling stories, but that language also has evolved into other kinds of language: biological language, the language of chemistry, the language of physics, anthropology, history, religion, spirituality. So now you have access to, a single person has access to more knowledge than, or as much knowledge as the entire knowledge or database of humanity. That's unbelievable,
That's just
actually.
amazing. That's just, to really think about that, that's staggering.
And I've experimented over the years with AI. While I see all these controversies, Democrats, Republicans fighting with each other, we now have the means literally to resolve conflicts, to come up with creative solutions for war, to reverse climate change, to actually change our biochemistry and our health span and how we regulate our bodies. And new technologies are coming, such as CRISPR, gene editing, vaccines for chronic illness, and much, much more. So, what we're seeing actually, Donnie, right now is a cultural and social revolution and a leapfrogging that has never happened before, other than short periods of history. So, between 1887 and 1903, humanity saw the light bulb, the automobile, the airplane, and the telephone.
That's fascinating.
20 years.
Just in
So
that
now,
20-year span, that's amazing.
20-year span. So if you had left New York City, gone on a cruise ship or something, and you got deserted in some island, and you emerged 20 years later, you would see automobiles and some horses and carriages as well. But you wouldn't realize the world you were seeing would be totally alien to you. And this is what is happening right now. We're changing our biology, we're changing our culture, we're changing the way we have social interactions, and ultimately we'll be enhancing our creativity, because AI is still a machine. It doesn't. It's super intelligent without being conscious. It doesn't have existential dilemmas. Doesn't feel sexual urge or thirst or hunger. Doesn't fear death. So it's not anything conscious. Never mind the conversation that's happening. Will AI become conscious? No. You need a biological instrument, such as your body and your brain, to express consciousness. So it'll never be conscious, but it'll be super intelligent, which means unless our emotional and spiritual evolution keep up with our technological evolution, we're screwed, literally, because we have these medieval minds and we have these modern capacities. So I thought it's very important for us to use AI to enhance our spiritual intelligence, to enhance our emotional intelligence, because we are at a crossroads. This road leads to extinction, and this road could lead to a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. Every technology in the beginning is counter to it.
Absolutely. How are you find? I don't know how much you research as far as who your users are. Are you finding young people are much more predisposed for AI and geezers like myself who are very, very late adopters, and or is it
Well,
going across the board?
I have an 88-year-old woman who speaks to my AI 10 hours a day. Okay. I mean, it's like my AI is like a pet companion now.
Right.
She's 88 years old. But yes, there's a pandemic right now. Suicide is the second most common cause of death amongst teens. So my AI actually is very helpful to people who are depressed. Not that it can, it cannot substitute for a good therapist, but it can give yourself time to reflect, to actually decrease your stress levels, and to even make you happy.
What are the simplest things? And obviously, I could find this by going on Deepak Chopra AI. If I was going to give the most simplistic answer to what somebody can do to find more inner peace, what are those? That's such a ridiculously macro question. But what are if somebody's just the average person, the average stresses that we all have, and they come in different shapes or forms. I'm just talking about somebody that wants to just calm down a little bit. What advice would you give them?
There's hundreds of ways.
Yeah, I'm just saying the simple answer. Like, okay, I want to today. I'm Donnie Deutsch. I'm stressed out. I'm stressed out about my children. I'm stressed out about work. I'm stressed out about the world. And I want to get tools to kind of chill a little bit. What's the short answer there?
Peace is our natural state when we are in the present moment. So all your distress comes from imagining a future,
Yes.
and or regretting a past, and the fear that the past will recycle in the future. If I asked you right this second, is there anything wrong? And the answer is no.
No.
As soon as you start thinking, yes.
Yeah.
So you can disrupt the algorithm immediately by just being aware of your breath immediately, or being aware of the sense.
Let's stop there. Okay, I'm worried about something. I do that. I catastrophize. I worry about something terrible is going to happen in the future. What can I do with my breathing? That just because you just said, well, you be conscious of your breath. What does that mean?
Just close your eyes and observe your breath. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. You see, your breath is a sensation and your thoughts are also sensations. You can't have two at the same time. So just observe your breath for a minute and let your body relax.
If you're not looking at this, you're just listening to it. I'm actually doing that now. My eyes are closed, and it does relax you. Just kind of tuning out and just, all right, let's listen to me breathe.
Or you could be aware of the sensations in your body, or you could just focus on the space in front of you. The space in front of you, the space between your thoughts, the space between sensations, the space between emotions is the same space. And the space is actually imbued with awareness. So this is a complicated answer, but actually, even now, as you're looking at me, instead of focusing on me, loosen your gaze, soften your eyes, and become aware of the space around you.
Okay.
And suddenly the mind quietens.
Yes. Yes, I just did that. And but why does that happen? That's so interesting. I'm staring at your screen, and then I kind of just now look back at my, I'm in my office in a bigger space, and It just relaxed me a little bit.
Yeah, because objects that will be called objects, every object has a history, and we start to immediately have an internal dialogue. What is that? Is it good? Is it bad? We start to label, we start to judge. But the space is the eternal witness of all that was, all that is, and all that will ever be. All the space right in front of you, the space between your fingers here is connected to intergalactic space. Um, it's infinite.
Is that when people say trust the universe? Because that's a very overused set of words.
Yeah,
I'm
I would
curious.
say trust your inner self. There's no universe, Johnny. The universe is a human construct for sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. You don't experience the universe. You experience only the contents of your consciousness, which you then interpret as the universe. It's a human construct. No other animal wonders about the universe.
That's amazing. I know we've talked about this in the past, but just if people are listening for the first time, how'd you get started on this journey? Because it's an
I'm
incredible
a
journey.
medical doctor. I trained in neuroscience, neuroendocrinology. So I looked at what we call the molecules of emotion long before they were popular, like serotonin, oxytocin, dopamine, opiates. And I realized that the molecules of emotion are also regulate our immune system, our endocrine system. So gradually moved from neuroendocrinology to integrative medicine and now a deeper understanding of what we call spirituality.
You mentioned serotonin. I know you're not going to give a blanket answer. Are people becoming too dependent on medication to solve their problems?
Yes, 100%. Everything that we call a medication that has a receptor in your body, otherwise it wouldn't work. So why does your body have receptors to serotonin or oxytocin or dopamine? Is because you can make them. Your body is the best pharmacy, and it is the ultimate and supreme genius, and makes the right dose, right drug, and the right dose for the right target organ. No side effects. On all the instructions come with the packaging, which is your brain.
But isn't the whole premise of drugs for depression and mental illness and anxiety the fact that you're just kind of squaring the serotonin levels are not where they should be, and it kind of gets things going in the right kind of order, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, if these chemicals are in surplus, if you're making too much of anything, that can lead to autoimmune diseases. If you're making too little of anything, then that can risk you for cancer and heart disease and infections and so on. So it's not a over aggressive immune system or an under responsive. It's a fine tuned immune system. And that happens if you sleep well, if you give up being right, if you don't argue, and if you do a little exercise and you don't get drunk, you'll be okay. The body knows how to self-regulate itself.
So drinking, not a good thing.
More and more evidence shows that, after maybe a glass of wine or one glass of whatever, there is inflammation and it disturbs your sleep. It relaxes you in the moment, but actually it interferes with your sleep. It interferes with your healing response. Yeah. Alcohol is the one drug that is legal that you have to apologize if you're not drinking.
It's amazing. I never thought about that. So if I'm having trouble sleeping, just give me some primers, some simple things.
If you're having trouble, by the way, you can ask all these questions from my
Yes.
AI.
Okay. We're doing the flesh and blood versus the AI.
Yeah,
But okay.
you can get a better answer, but the best way to get a good sleep is have a dynamic day full of activity, exercise. But the more active you are, the more enjoyable your days, the better your sleep will be. But then there's another rule, and that is about 10 hours before you go to sleep, don't have any coffee. So, I stop having coffee because coffee is actually good for you nowadays.
Right.
We have all this evidence, but don't have coffee after, say, 12 noon. And then about 3 hours before you sleep, uh, don't have alcohol. If you are going to have alcohol, have it before. And so it's worn off before you go to sleep. About 2 hours before you go to sleep, don't have a heavy meal or have a very light meal. And then 1 hour before you sleep, cut off all electronics.
I do everything wrong. Everything wrong.
When you sleep, don't put on an alarm clock. Wake up when you wake up. And if you have difficulty sleeping, then try to stay awake. The more you try to stay awake, the more your body will want to sleep.
Is there, in your research over the years and in your interactions with clients and patients and people, are you seeing a different kind of anxiety today than 20 years ago? Or is it the same human struggles and those don't change with the times?
It's the same thing. I look at my parents used to say the same things. They worried about the Holocaust, the Second World War. My grandparents worried about the Great Depression, the Great Pandemic, the First World War. Their parents were involved in other issues. So, we've been recycling trauma for thousands of years.
That's amazing.
And it's reached its peak now.
What is trauma?
Trauma is being hurt, either verbally or emotionally or physically or sexually. And ultimately, it leads to the perception of threat and fear. And that then recycles. Anger is the memory of trauma, etc. Hostility is the desire for retribution. Guilt and shame follow as a result. And then depletion of energy, which is called depression.
Deepak Chopra, I could talk to you all day. I love that you came back. The most recent of his 95 books, Digital Dharma, How AI Can Elevate Spiritual Intelligence and Personal Well-Being. Go to deepakchopra.ai. You basically can get your own personal Deepak. He's even superior because he's bringing even more of the world knowledge to the table. It's a real privilege to talk to you, sir.
Thank you, Donnie. Thank you. Lovely to meet you again.
We'll see you soon. Everybody, thanks for watching. If you like it, hit that subscribe button. And we love having you here watching On Brand. And just don't miss any future episodes. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll see you next time.